Hey everybody, welcome back to the Roblox World War II Community Podcast. It's been 3 months since we posted. We've had good reasons. Yod, what was that reason again that we weren't posting? What was it?
We've been lazy fucks.
Yeah, that. Yeah. All right. Anyways, if you didn't know already, this podcast is meant to kind of discuss with leaders on their views regarding the World War II community on Roblox, what they think should be, the status quo, what should be improved, what isn't, in favor of the community. So today we've been able to have a special guest on. His name is Nerferdude 16. Say hello.
Hi, everyone.
And we'll be asking him some questions with my co-host Yodbond.
You go Blazers.
Yep. And do you want to ask the first question, Yod, or not?
I wouldn't deprive you of that honor.
All right. I guess let's just go on our wheel here, our spin wheel. Okay, Nerfer. So when did you join Roblox, and how and when did you get involved in the World War II community?
So first off, before I answer that question, I just want to say thank you both for having me on the podcast. I know you guys have been trying to get this project up more and more and have more guests on the program. So I appreciate the fact that you are willing to still have more conversations with people and create more content that many leaders in the past have not tried to do. I started playing Roblox in 2011. A friend introduced me after I got a little bored of Facebook games. And he introduced me to a fun war group at the time called the Bactovian Empire. The first game I ever remember playing was the Bactovian Swampy Moon Outpost. Back at the time, was at war with Rat. This is in the Super Clan community. And I always really was energized with the feeling of fighting in wars, playing war games, understanding military strategy. So I immediately got hooked with the idea of Roblox because of the way that you could be a soldier. And not in a sense where you have to follow one game narrative, where you could literally be yourself and be in your own world.
So like how Roblox advertises, like, oh yeah, you can build anything you want. That
Yeah,
kind of appealed to
it
you?
was really exciting because I remember playing all these games on Xbox, Call of Duty, numerous other games, and I got bored because you had to be dragged around with what to do. You were fighting a conflict, but you never felt like you were really in charge. Even when playing games like Fallout, I'm a huge Fallout fan. You still had to do what the game programmed you to do. You had some options, but you couldn't go beyond those options.
Yeah, you couldn't create your own complete thing unless you like modded or something.
Mm.
I mean, that's always, but again, that's kind of been always the appeal. Because like when I play like sandbox games, I mean, I can't really do what I want to do, anyways. Roblox offers that charm where you could just literally build what you want and then make up your story as it goes along.
And it's got like ease of creativity as well. Like the studio is really helpful. It's changed a lot since back in the day.
Oh yeah, and so far I haven't found a single game like it.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, with the unions and everything, it is really good for like creativity and stuff like that. Scripting help as well, like it tells you where the errors are and stuff like that. So it's a really good game for developers, especially with the DevX stuff they brought in now. The only problem I have with that is it's prioritizing game developers, and the game developers are making games that suit children, and they're getting popular, and they're kind of saying, "Oh, well, Roblox isn't a game for all ages anymore. It's for like 12 to 9-year-olds."
So another question we had for you, Nerfer. Do you think it was made for more of like a mature audience, or like or like teenagers, or do you think it still appeals to younger children?
I will be honest and say that it was made to appeal to younger children. I think that understanding David Baszucki, I think that was his name, the guy who originally started up the platform. I remember him talking about how when he was younger, he always used to be very mathematical in his thinking. He wanted to create a game that is, different than most video games, where you could really think about creating your own world, but also thinking in a more creative way, being more mathematical about things, being more educated about things. So yes, I do think that Roblox is a game that was designed for younger children, but a specific type of children, if that makes sense. This is not like your average game that you'd go buy at the store. This is something where I think his heart was put into based upon his past experiences.
Yeah, I can see that point. Another statement there, like, So, since you've been on the game, have you noticed it go from like being centered to a certain age group, and now it's gone downhill, in my opinion? So it's lingering more towards children. Because back in the day, you could swear on the platform, you could get away with everything as long as your account was 13 plus. You could do anything.
So I don't think it's being done in the name of to just to get children involved. I think it's just being done because Roblox is making more money. They want to get more in the mainstream game market. Roblox was seen as sort of a fringe game just a few years ago. Now you can play it on your Xbox. Now you can buy these cards in mainstream stores. You go in front of any major video game store, you can see, you know, Roblox advertisements in the windows. That's stuff you did not see back then. Years ago, like, you'd go to your 7-Eleven in the middle of the night, you know, when no one's there, and you get your Roblox card. Now you can go in front of a GameStop and you can see the Roblox signs right then and there. I think they're just doing it because they're making more money and they want to look more mainstream. I think they always had the same intentions to not want any profanity or any content that would be inappropriate to kids.
Mhm.
But yeah, it's just marketing. They're expanding.
Yeah.
That also brings another question up, again, regarding age. Do you think that maybe with this expansion that they could possibly branch Roblox into different categories for people? Like they could rate games on their platform, and if
By
you're
age,
not
for sure.
an X amount of years old, you can't play this game because it has
Yes.
violence or something like that.
I see that as a possibility, and I remember they were even talking about things like this as far back as 2012 and 2013. They want to try to do. They're trying really hard to try to separate the notion of 13 plus from 13 below. And I still think they haven't really found the magical lock that they could put on everyone to make sure that those things are separate. I think that's a good thing. I don't think they should be separate. But they are still trying to figure that out. That, I think, is one of their main objectives. Because they still are fine with people who are, you know, teenagers and old and that playing on this game. But they want to still try to reach out to kids. They still want to try to do these things. But I think, you know, you have people, especially older people, they have more creative skills, in my opinion, and more expertise to build up these games. They have, you know, they learn more in school and things like that. So really separating the 13 plus from 13 below, I don't think that's a really good thing. I think you should just combine them, and if there's any inappropriate content, moderation should just simply be the same.
Well, if you think about it,
Having out to stop their efforts to put these two groups in separate categories.
well, if you think about it, I mean, if you're trying to gain followers or at least like, you know, visitors and stuff on your games, you would still have a large group of people be able to make games or products for the younger children on the platform, and that would still appeal to people 13 and below. And I guess there's still people who are 13 and above and don't find, you know, crude humor or violence, etc., that interesting. Because we've seen plenty of games made by teenagers and 20-year-olds that are for all ages on this platform.
Oh, yeah. Look at the front page games right now.
Let's be
I
honest.
don't think that most of the people who made those games are like 6 to 9 years old.
There's no
These
way
are
that's possible.
No,
These
they're
are
all in their
people that are
20s.
getting internships with Roblox. These are people that are making money by DevXing. These are not people that are just, you know, being silly about this and telling their parents what they think of the new block they just inserted. It's something a little more sophisticated, a little more complicated. And that's why I still think Roblox has not found the combination they want to make to separate 13 plus and 13 below. Because I think they're really at a standstill here. And I think they should just abandon their efforts to do that.
I disagree on that. In all honesty, I think they should have two versions, 13 plus and 13 non-below, which they currently do, but there's literally no difference between the two, apart from I think the chat is slightly less moderated. Now, my opinion of how it should be is if you're 13 plus, you can have well, personally, you should be allowed to swear. Obviously, things like pornographic content, like stupid games, swastikas, all of that still should be banned. Nothing like how it used to be back in the day, where you could swear, but people that are under your age, like they're under the 13 plus mode, it will come up with hashtags. That's perfectly easy for them to implement. But they don't bother implementing it because they don't give a fuck about the 13 plus people. Even though it says in the game's description, a game for all ages. Now, obviously, we know people like 20 plus is getting a bit far. But what I'm saying is, why can't they just make it a little bit more accessible for us who still want to play the game and run groups and do things like that? That as you said, the more experienced people are the ones who make the games, script them, do all the work, put all the effort in. Why can't we still have a fun time without being all this with all the restrictions on like what you can type? Like you type in a group link, a thing from their own site, and it can get hashtagged.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just getting a bit too tedious, in my opinion. Like that's probably going to be the reason I quit when I do.
I think it's also the PR stuff that they're getting. You know, a lot of concerns now about.
Yeah, there was a recent BBC article regarding a rape case or something like that. Yeah, gang rape with some underage kid. Again, that goes back to settings that they could possibly implement to counter that. Like, if your game doesn't meet these requirements or has these certain filters enabled, then you can't appear on the front page or you're not accessible to people under the age of 13.
Exactly. I mean, they have the capability to do that. I'm pretty sure they've had restrictions in the past that you had to be BC to enter a game. Why can't they just re-implement that? And if you're under 13, you can't enter that game. And there's a criteria that's listed saying if it has gore, blood, things like this, possibility of swearing. Because some people do story games, and like they kind of sometimes need to swear to get across the point. Like you used to be able to say bastard. Bastard just means you don't have a legitimate father. Like they weren't married, but you can't even say that anymore.
It just goes back to, I mean, even half the time when you're swearing as well, it can still get past filters if you have it phrased in a specific way, or you don't say it completely, or you just like substitute a letter with a number. So for instance, you say hell, but like you replace one of the L's with like a number 1, and then people can still understand what you're saying.
Yeah. Like with the letter her or sir in German, that's been hashtagged. So how people do it now is they type HE, comma, RR.
This reminds me of the old days when I had an alt account in the Second Element Empire, and I remember I had to try to do my best to get in line properly, to rise up through the ranks so I could gather intelligence. And I remember Excellion just schooling me when I was on this alt, like, we've switched to German now, you can't say English anymore. And he gave me all the instructions on what to say. And for years and years, I was just hooked on those same statements. And then, like, I remember all of their supporters were like, oh my god, we can't use German anymore.
So what, like they just tell you to get on Google Translate and fucking decipher what they're saying on...
Get back to English! If you have to copy and paste, do it now!
Love Roblox, man. Anyways, when did you get involved in the World War II community?
I got involved in November of 2011. I remember specifically, so in September and October, I was in a few Hellgas groups. They were knockoffs of Actovia because at the time I found it hard to advance up through the ranks. And I remember becoming a captain in this one Hellgas group under General Joseph Land. And there was a guy named Warhammer123. We were of the same rank and we had some sort of disagreement in the group. And I remember being really, really angry at him. So on my off time, I followed him to a place called RSSR Soviet Hills. He belonged to a group called the Robloxian Soviet Socialist Republic. And I remember just being on the Raiders team, charging in and killing all the Soviet troops that were patrolling there. I retreat back a little bit, and then I'm encountered by 2 grenadiers from a group called the Ostrov Empire. It was a World War II German group led by a guy named Herr Krieg. I remember being escorted after that battle to Herr Krieg's base. At the time, it was just a base plate with some columns and an old house. The architecture was a little weird back then. And he introduced himself to me. He told me that he was grateful for what I did. He wanted me to join up in Ostrov, and I immediately did. And soon after that, I became a grenadier, then a grenadier corporal. And then I quickly rose up the ranks even more and became a general, enough to fight the RSSR on their own territory in massive battles. And then months later, I rose up to become the Crown Prince of Ostrand.
How long did it take you to rise through the ranks? As like overall?
To rise up through the ranks in general, to get into the high command, it took me about a month. Specifically because at the time when I was in Ostrand, I had a lot of fun. With some of these people, it takes around a year or more to rise.
Like, were you on there daily?
Yes, I was on there daily. I had so much fun at the time being involved with Ostrad fighting the RSSR, I felt like I was actually in some sort of family.
Yeah, I can understand that. It's quite typical, I feel, that with people's first groups.
Why do you think I've been with RCCP for so long?
Exactly. Well, actually, I think that's more of like a mental problem.
Fuck off. Not so much the group itself, but the people there kind of made it feel special.
And where are they all now?
Well, still talk to them.
A few of them.
No, I speak to a lot of them outside, but anyways, we can get into that later. So,
The man's got connections.
yeah, I got connections, man. I got connections all around the globe. I'm a drug lord. Anyways, so
Surprise me.
do you know any people in there that you could like recall for us? Like any notable people that helped shape you?
So there were numerous people under my command. Some people who later on turned out to be future veterans of Luisato's groups, people who were on the opposite side of the firing lines. I remember Sword 00, who later on became one of my most trusted officers and one of the heroes of the Allied movement. He had Moon 166, who was in my general staff. He later on became Kadoa, head of the CCCP. There's RTRT 256. He is now known as Rolando. He is one of the heads of Lavo's current regime and is under Luisato's command. And there are numerous other people that are still, to this day, on the platform because of the fact that they got a lot of training and experience in Ostron. I was taught back then in that regime to learn the art of offensive operations, to engage in a practice of total war, not leaving until you get every resource available, to take by force. And a lot of these people quickly learned that mentality. And sadly, later on, I found out that they tried to use the tactics that I taught many of these people against us.
So, So yeah, a lot of people like so Ostrat and literally all of Lewis's groups, you could say, were geared towards more offensive warfare.
Yes, most definitely. The only difference is that in the latter years, it didn't seem like that because they were trying to hide. I was on the other side of the firing lines, and I knew their tactics. So we were infiltrating them, we were fighting them, we were sending people to raid them, we were reporting them, we were doing anything possible to try to defeat them, to destroy them. And because of that, they didn't go on the map many raids because they had to watch their own borders, but they still held the same mentality.
Could you say that Ostrat, as well as any other of Luisato's groups, were politically motivated or driven?
100%. They were motivated by National Socialism. I stayed in the group at the time because I saw Lewis as a good friend. I ignored his politics and felt like I was in a really fun, really exciting group. But at the same time, when I was the Crown Prince of Austria, I did bad things under his orders. I remember, this is silly in comparison to some of the things now. I remember going to some random game called John Dale Middle School. It was filled with a bunch of random people. We sent in around 20 Ostron troops. And we didn't leave the server until every single one of the random players either rage quit or joined in our ranks. And we did this to several games. We routinely harassed them and made sure that they'd join us. Or else we'd make the server irrelevant.
Did you have it to where, did you have any standoffs where people just refused to fucking leave?
A few, but we later prevailed. And we, of course, did far worse things as well. I remember, Luisato ordering me to send in exploiters that we had under our command to destroy entire towns. There were 448 towns, town of Lost Haven, St. Paul, numerous places where we've sent in people to destroy everything. All under the guise of conquest, all under the guise of everything must submit to our rule. And that Lewis's ideology must prevail. He did it in the name of ideology. I did it at the time in the name of loyalty.
So, moving on with this idea that Ostrot was politically motivated, do you think that other World War II groups should be politically motivated or driven?
Should they be politically motivated or driven? I don't know.
Like, should they have like?
I don't know if they should be. Are they? Yes. They absolutely are. Roblox is built on the idea that you can create your own world. Well, how can you have a world without a world? I've been in numerous groups in this World War II community, if we want to call it that, for years. I've infiltrated groups. I've been in positions, low-ranking positions, high-ranking positions, Panzer groups, Jaeger groups, groups from numerous other nations, Allied Axis, you name it. Let's pretend that the leader does not have a specific political ideology. You still have people that talk badly about one another. You still have people that engage in such horrible behavior, talks of DDoSing and talks of harassing one another. This entire quote-unquote community is political. That's the honest truth. And people resisting against that are only stating that because they don't like what's happened to them.
Well, that goes on to the main question. So, should you don't know, but how about you yourself? Are you politically motivated?
Yes, absolutely.
Do you bring politics onto?
Like, what type of politics do you usually indulge yourself in?
So, I don't bring in all of my personal political views. Like, I don't care about your stance on economics. I don't care about every single stance you have on current policy in the world. I bring in the following politics. That neo-Nazism on this platform is a problem.
Yeah.
That there have been people that have tried to copy Louis Otto's groups for years. That Louis Otto is still relevant and active on the platform.
Yep.
And he has used this platform in such a creative way, like we talk about the good benefits of this platform, creating your own world, feeling like you can actually do something and not be, guided like all the other video games are, to recruit people. We all know of this. We all know what he's actually done. And you could say, well, I've never served in Louis Otto's groups. I served in a Panzer division. I'll give a good example. Panzer Lehr division. Mm-hmm. It was led by a person named Eric 2811NL. Mm-hmm. Eric was a former colonel in the Imperial Boxing military, which was Louis's first military group. It was his first Nazi group ever. It started in 2009. And Eric loved working for Louis, but he wanted to have some creativity of his own. So he made Panzer Lehr. Panzer Lehr students started building their own technology, creating their own following. But Eric always still worked with Louis. Eric is not a Nazi himself, but he's good friends with Louis. He's built technology for him. I remember being in the Austro Empire, and we had joint patrols and joint raids with Panzer Lehr. When I was fighting Louis, even years later in 2013 and 2014, Louis was making plans with Panzer Lehr to mount offensives. Even when Panzer Lehr tried to hide from the bad reputation of being associated with Louis, they still did it underground.
Yeah.
But they also did too. I remember this specifically. They were able to get one of my phone numbers, and they sent people to try to harass my family.
Was this the Kibler incident?
No, this was not the Kibler incident. This is people in Panzer Lehr. This is, of course, not everybody in Panzer Lehr. There were some people from Lehr that weren't associated with this. But I'm just trying to make the point that a lot of these groups, a lot of these quote-unquote reenactment groups, this idea that they're not motivated by politics at all is a lie.
And
somehow,
they started harassing you before you started reporting groups, correct?
No, this was during the time we've engaged in this tactic since 2012.
Oh, okay.
But another great thing to bring up is a lot of other people have. We can of course get into this later on in the podcast, but the whole thing of reporting, I learned about the concept of reporting in Austria under Louis's orders. We used to report content by the Excellion division in order to try to destroy TED and to bring their supporters to our group, because Louis thought that our group is the best National Socialist group. Excellion does not know what he's talking about. We will scam him, we will destroy him, we'll bring them over. He's scammed Excellion so many times. He's used underhand tactics so many underhand tactics that I would not even touch in order to bring them over. So this idea that all of these groups are somehow in this nice, peaceful place where, there's no politics involved is a lie. It's all politics. All of it is. Somehow, somewhere in these groups. It could be the leadership, it could be the builders, it could be the content, it could be the DDoSing, not liking certain people, doing intelligence operations, making vignettes, spreading it around to other groups that you happen to be friendly with.
So did Excellion also engage in these tactics to try and destroy Lewis's group?
Yes.
Oh, he did?
Yes.
All right. Same with scamming.
They were just going back and forth at each other.
So
It's like it's Avengers Civil War.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I even tried to convince Lewis Otto at the time to engage in a more diplomatic solution because I said, no, I cannot hold any alliances with these people. I started to later on see his reasoning because there's no point in even debating the concept of having, like, the Excellion Division and the Ostrad Empire being these two separate groups when they can really be together. TED is a knockoff of Alamut. It's a knockoff of the first major Nazi empire. If you want to achieve your goals and you want to win your war, why be separate? Because, well, I want to be my own Führer. That makes no sense. And then you're just wasting time trying to build stuff and all this when you can just combine everything and bulldoze over your opponents.
I disagree to that to an extent. I mean, a part of the appeal, yeah, it sounds stupid to be like, oh yeah, I can be my own Führer, but in the context, it's basically saying I can be my own boss. I don't have to listen to them if I don't like that policy.
Oh, of course. Yeah, that also is what Roblox is based off of. But I think that many of those leaders have moved past that notion and have not thought of in the context of wanting to play your own game and build your own group. They're thinking about larger objectives. So in that context, I think that they should have made a smart decision. I can tell you this right now. If all these groups that used to serve under Lewis, if they all reunited under him, we'd be in big trouble. Big trouble.
So that
a lot of these people, they had disagreements with him in the group, or they were being immature, and so they broke off and they wanted to start their own thing. When in reality, a lot of these groups ended up failing.
Well, whether or not they fail, I guess that doesn't defeat your point that you were making, that these people understand the bigger picture. When it comes to leaders who've been in this community for a long time, yes, it makes sense that they understand the bigger picture, but their officers, their regular soldiers, etc., that won't stop them just because they know what's the greater good and whatnot. That isn't going to stop them from doing their own groups.
Sure, but also when you see these groups fail time and time and time again, with the same people making the same mistake, you think, they should kind of know by now that they kind of messed up, that they kind of wasted a lot of money. When they have an offer coming their way to make them like a field marshal in a much higher, more successful group, and they'd be more known and more remembered. And then later on, when the current leader leaves, and then they get to take over, I think that leaves more of a mark and creates more fun. The more resources, in my opinion, you have, the more fun you can have.
I think I should speak on this matter as I've got the most experience with this. How I see it is someone can invite me to a group, but that will always be my second priority. I always have my first priority as my own groups. If I'm not doing my own group, which I haven't done a few times, RCCP, for instance, a few other groups I've worked with people, typically it always results in me being removed because I am a very opinionated person, and if I don't have a similar opinion with someone, it will get heated. So it's typically not always my fault. It's sometimes it is, sometimes it isn't, because as I said, I'm very opinionated. If I feel like I'm in the right, I will keep it going. However, if I'm in the wrong and I'm proven wrong, I will happily admit I'm wrong. So in that case, I must say I prefer leading groups because at least then I don't disagree with myself. I mean, obviously, I can. It sounds.
Well, that would be a big issue, right?
Yeah, I know, but like with when people are below you, it's different because you have the power to dictatoriate. Like I don't personally do that. I'm very open with people that under me, people like Jackie, people. If they have a problem, they'll come to me and we'll speak about it. Like, I could have kicked at least 4 of these people out of me to my groups for petty little things, or sometimes even big things. But I always give people more chances because I'm too nice. And I'm not saying that because I'm bigging myself up with fake compliments. This is what they're telling me. I'm too nice. I shouldn't give them this many chances after we've like sorted the issues out.
Well, the mentality in the World War II community now, since there's been so much backstabbery and conning and scamming. I mean, Nerfer, I'm pretty sure you're well aware of Alexander Thanos. It's kind of hard to trust people when they always have their own motive.
Yeah, and that's why you always have to keep an eye out on things. That's why intelligence is always very important. That's why it's good to always check audit logs. It's also good sometimes to give people second chances, though. I will admit. Sometimes people can change, but I have become a little more cynical on my opinions. I towards a lot of these other groups. I think that you could have a much more productive time if things were under large superpowers.
Let me just stop you there and go to the next question.
Sure.
So, what are your opinions on the other groups in the community? Specifically, as you just mentioned, the super groups, as we call them.
Name some.
RM1940s. However, I'm not sure if that's still functional. I heard they had a bit of a civil war. I haven't really kept
At the moment, apparently it is. At the moment,
I think Backbutton's trying to bring it back, but they're still in the middle of a civil war split. So I'm not sure where that's going to turn. We've obviously got USM 1940s making a huge comeback. I mean, let's be honest, they're better than they were before. Now, the problem with that is Eric's just sitting there funneling money to himself.
I would disagree with you about USM. I think USM overall is going to eventually fail. Eric is just sitting there. The only reason why USM might look like it's doing good right now is because a few of the models got bored over the summer months, and they want to do something to not see the group die.
Actually, I'm going to jump in there real quick. I'm pretty sure I'm friends with a few of the models. Personally, I don't really like Eric. I'm friends with a few of the models, and not that many of them are actually in USM. There are a few, but the majority that are in there,
right? It's a large family that spans even outside of USM. But what I'm saying is the ones that are currently in USM, the ones that are currently in the high command, they do not want to see this massive money making operation go to waste. They want to. I even saw that they made a new Shafe group and appointed 2 new people, official Supreme Allied Commanders, starting with the line of Nerferdude. Meanwhile, I never ever said that these people were the next SAC. These guys are a bunch. They just want to see their project live. That's it. Well, and I think USM in general will go downhill. Now, RM is another good, interesting story. So, and I'll actually talk about USM in conjunction with this. Specifically, 3 people: Abiano Fernandez, Backbutton, and Eric Modell. So, basically, in 2015, you started to see these massive random supergroups pop up, and you have these trollish leaders with the default faces that started coming around. Like, you never saw this in the past. Usually the largest group leaders that were around at the time beforehand was Luisato and myself. Usually,
people
the ones that, like usually if you get like 3,000 to 5,000 members, boom, you're a superpower. That's what it was like in 2014.
I remember, quite frankly, back when we did the divisions, that we were always like scrambling to get people like Iceball inside because they had 1,000 members. We're like, oh my god, his group's so big, and you gotta be one of like 2,000 at one point. We were like, oh, we got to get him in the allies.
If you have ads functioning and sponsorship, you can probably get 1,000 members in just a few days, depending how you do it and depending how your group is. That's nothing else. But back then we thought it was everything. So in 2015, you had these 3 people just pop up out of the wet work. And this is going to be kind of long. So you have Backbutton, you have Abiano Fernandez. Abiano Fernandez was a former officer of mine. His name is Lazy Mr. Fabregas, and I always liked the guy back when he was in the original Shafe. He helped me make game passes. When game passes just came out, he showed me how to make them. He he was very patient with me. And back in 2015, I set up one large, massive U.S. military group, one that sort of combined all the powers of Shafe together, but under one armed entity that could be sent anywhere at any time. Several months as TGAA, was progressing, a person named Abiano Fernandez comes to my headquarters and offers to give me this group called United States Military 1940s because he was inspired by my past groups, by SHAFE and by TGAA. He thought, well, I'll see how this goes. But it was all based on the same timeline that I started. And I remember he said, I'll give you the whole group if you just give me a general rank. And I said, sure, that's a pretty good deal. You served well under me in the past. And I then had to take a break because of real life matters. And then I come back in, I believe, November of 2015. And I see that USM 1940s, the group that was supposed to go to the Grand Army of America, it now reached 21,000 and had full surfers at their bases. I made the mature decision to say, all right, we're going to shut down the Grand Army of America and make USM the next official allied group in the main timeline.
Yeah.
Later on, though, Abiano Fernandez started to care more about making money, more about trolling, more about scamming kids, more about being a joke than being an actual leader, than caring about people, than having a good reputation, than fighting our enemies. And then so I was saddened to see that now started to become a norm in these groups, that Abiano Fernandez turned into some random supergroup leader.
Yeah. I'm gonna jump
yeah.
in. So when did you meet Abino?
I met him back in, I believe, either 2011 or 12. We served in Ostrov together.
Oh, okay, because I met Abino, I think it was 2015. It was about a year before TGAA. Now, my first experience with him, because I met him, he pretty much free-ranked me on the dot as soon as we met. He gave me a developer role because I saw an advert he was doing. He was doing like some, I think it was either a British group or an American group set in the Revolutionary War. And that interested me at the time. So I joined, he free-ranked me, I became a developer for him. And long story short, he scammed me and exiled me. Typical of what he would do in the future.
Yeah.
Now, a year or two later, back when he was doing USM 1940s, he got in contact with me and apologized for the past, saying, "Oh yeah, I was dumb, I was childish, whatever." And me being me, I'm like, "Yep, whatever, it's in the past." He asked me to be a developer for USM 1940s, so I joined. He made me the second in command for I think 3 months of USM 1940s. This was near its height. It was its height, as you said, 50-player servers every day. He made me the chief of justice, head of the military police. You know the logo with the military police, the old one with the guy with the 2 pistols?
Yes.
I had that made. Literally, he gave me full run of the group, and instantly I started purging the dumb officers. I started purging anyone who was not adequate, who was not suited for the job. And after I'd gotten through about half of the staff, because literally half of the staff were free-ranked idiots, he goes to me and goes, "Oh, by the way, you're fired," and exiled me. And the reason for it, he gave it to me, I was firing the staff that even though they were retarded and stupid, they hosted patrols, and that made him...
Yeah.
So it's literally about money.
Yeah, no, that's what it was for him later on. And we've seen this happen too with Backbutton, and we've seen this happen with Eric Modell as well. With Backbutton, however, this is an interesting story, because I know I said I was going to talk about all 3, but Backbutton, he always came off as this weird person to me. He always came off as this very sarcastic person. He could never be serious about anything. With Eric and with Abiano, they were serious sometimes. They at least got you to believe that they cared later for a little bit. With Backbutton, no. With Backbutton, he always just wanted to mess around. And I don't mean mess around as in just playing a game. I remember when I led the Western Ascendancy, and I believe this was back in February of 2018, he came, a few defectors from RM came over to my group. They said that Backbutton scammed a kid or so out of 300,000 Robux and just acted like a complete troll about it. And I remember just by me simply letting in these people in the group, RM left the Allied Concord, which was the successor to SHAFE. And you know, I didn't even hold many opinions about Backbutton back then. I thought, you know, this is a guy that is not serious. This is a guy that will do his own thing, but he's welcome to join our alliances. We could always use more friends and more people to help fight the cause.
Yeah.
And he just kept moving back and forth. Even back when my forces were in USM, He kept joining Shafe. He kept leaving Shafe. He kept joining Shafe. He kept leaving Shafe. Pick a side. Are you joining Shafe? Are you staying in Shafe, or are you leaving Shafe? And this is a guy you could never really know where he stands. So he's just this trollish dude who wants to mess with people. I'd be okay if you wanted to start some historic Russian group and be isolationist or whatever you wanted to do. But this guy was actively going around and messing with people. And yet, he's made vignettes calling me some sort of man-child who takes things seriously, really. So you, Backbutton, being the innocent game owner, the innocent player, messing with people, insulting them, scamming people, not being polite, not having proper decorum, that's it's not playing a game. It's bullying. It's harassment.
Kind of goes back to IJ, in my opinion, where they just constantly memed and didn't give a fuck about anything.
Yeah. And
So-
look, nobody has to be serious about everything, but you should care at least a little bit of how you look. Especially if you're going to be on this platform for a long time, especially if you're going to have vignettes made about you, especially if you have a reputation to look out. You want to look like a good leader to the people that are serving below you. You don't want to look like a joke. You want to look like you're confident. You want to look like you're going to make content that will make people want to play your games. Not like some joke. And then now that leaves us the last person, Eric Model. So I'll go back in time even more and talk about a person named Conan Kibler, Kibler 44.
Uh-huh.
The Kiblers came out of the Ostrov Empire. They were a bunch of neo-Nazi kids and racist kids at the time who were in Ostrov. They had a disagreement with Lewis, like a lot of these other Axis Führer, Kaiser people were. They just disagreed with Lewis on some stuff, and then they left because they didn't want to be united, which again, in my opinion, was silly. But the Kiblers had more of a trashy vibe to them. You know, both Lewis's people and the Kiblers were National Socialists, and they were, you know, white supremacists. However, Lewis at least tried to make his argument sound a little more sophisticated. The Kiblers were like, we don't like black people. You know, that's the kind of vibe that they gave off. They started a group called the Kingdom of Bavaria in 2013. It had a World War I vibe, even though it was really a World War II group. And then later on, it just went all out Second World War. They got involved in a war against the Holy Roman Imperium, which was absolutely silly. If the Kiblers and the Holy Romans actually united, they would have showed they could have potentially taken down Shafe. If they had the resources to infiltrate us and to try to stop us, they could have done that. But instead, they fought each other because of their disagreements over the specifics of ideology. Lewis Otto calling Kibler, should that be? Yeah, whatever. Him calling Kibler a buffoon and a coward, and then Kibler just throwing jokes back at Lewis Otto. And there was one person in Kibler's high command in Bavaria. His name was Tubby 2013. Later on, he became known as Eric Mo. When Shafe destroyed the original Kingdom of Bavaria, a lot of these Kiblers at the time, they got really angry. And they swore to never, ever, ever like the original Allied creators, to never like Nerfer, to never like John, to never like Sword, to never like any of these people. And the myth of Bavaria being a strong group became their vibe for years to come. The Kiblers later on changed their name to Model, and Eric Model ended up starting a second Bavarian empire, which USM was at war with. Bavaria was beaten many times. Lewis Otto didn't like the fact that Bavaria was still a problem, the second Bavarian group, and he wanted to find some way to stop them. And for a while, Bavaria, even a little after that, went into a period of inactivity. But then later on, I believe in December of 2016. From February of 2017.
Mm-hmm.
I found out that Eric Model took ownership of the U.S. military in the 1940s from a man of similar character, of a similar trashy mentality, Aviano Fernandez. Both money-making trolls, both people that look like they troll around and don't care about anyone in the world. that same sort of persona where they just wanted to milk people for cash. Although with Eric, he still had plenty of people in his ranks who also thought that black people were inferior. That was the difference.
I've got two things to add into this real quick. So when it comes to Eric started off doing an Italy group, which he used for money. Shut down after about 2 or 3 months, I'm not entirely sure. Then he moved to a second reincarnation of Bavaria.
Yep.
Again, used for money. Didn't get banned this one. I think he still owns the original.
It just died out.
Yeah, he killed it because he used it for money. Then he did a Rome with stolen technology, as usual, can't make his own. And this is what makes me laugh the most. The Roman genre.
I know where you're going.
The Roman genre at this time was really big and really popular, and there were like 3 or 4 big Romes. I used to be in Rome, like literally less than a year ago, and I wasn't one of the huge groups, but I was known by all the huge groups because my developer was the top ones. Not for scripting wise, but model wise. Like people like Augustus Julius Caesar or Nate, you've probably seen his adverts all over the place. He actually came to me in a call one time and was like scared because there's another Rome that was popping.
Mm-hmm.
He agreed to do another thing. But anyway, that's a different subject. So Eric does this Rome. He makes money off of it, lots and lots and lots, from like selling game passes for ridiculous prices. And then Gullible Albino Fernandez comes across and goes, "Oh, you know, USM's not really that popular anymore. Rome's really popular." So he trades. I think it was how big was it at the time? Maybe
it had only like a few thousand members. Like 4,000?
No. It was at least had 100K. I'm pretty sure. When he gave it up, it had at least 100K.
I was told that it was small.
No, I'm pretty sure because I remember looking and thinking, "What a fucking moron!" It was about 100K, I think, and it was still decently active, like 30 people, 40 people. But he sold it for Rome. And here's the funny thing.
Rome, I thought you were talking about Rome's membership.
No, I'm talking about...
Rome's membership was small. USM's membership had several 100,000 by then.
Yeah. And Bino had like 300,000 maybe, and Rome only had like 20K. And they traded it because Bino's so dumb and gullible, he thought Rome was going to be a success, and he had no idea how to lead. He'd never been in the community. He didn't have active people that followed him much. The whole family died because I'm pretty sure he was linked to the Cadden family.
The family was still around. A lot of the people from the original Bavaria were still there, but they just automatically moved in to something that they were not used to. They were on the complete opposite side of the battle lines now. And what I didn't like is that now you have these models, these former Kibblers, that despised everything Shafe did, that took control of Shafe's largest and most successful group at the time.
Exactly.
That's what I didn't like. Over Abiano's mentality of, how much Robux could I make? How much fun could I have with stabbing people with Roman swords? Oh, that's fun. Regrets the decision 2 minutes later.
Yeah. Anyway.
They're not like these innocent game players. They're not like, I see their propaganda all the time. Nerfer takes the game too seriously. He's the second Louis Otto. Okay, fine. Play the game for playing the game, sure. But the way they're doing it, they're not playing a game. They're messing with people. They're scamming people. They're threatening people. This is not innocent people who want to play the game. These are people that want to use people for cash. And with Eric in particular, his supporters, a lot of people in the Modell family were white supremacists. So these weren't victims. These were tyrants.
But anyway, I'd like to add, you keep referring to Eric as like the successor of the Kibblers. May I just quickly add, I stayed in contact with Franz, or the original Kibbler, for quite a while. Whenever he used to come back, he always used to DM me. Like, we weren't friends. We spoke. And he used to DM me and be like, "Yo, you got any maps?" And I'd sell him my old shit ones, and he'd give me like 15K instantly, like off the dot. Because I think he worked, so he could just funnel money into me. And I literally used it as like a personal money bank. Because every month he'd come back and he'd have a new group because the other one banned, and he'd be like, "Give me, you got any maps? Any maps you can give me?" I just give him the shit hand-me-down, and he'd give me 15K. And he'd go. So I must have made like 45K off him, 50K off him, but Eric was kicked out of the Kibbler family. Can't remember the reason why, because it was about a year ago or 2 years ago I asked. But he was disowned from the Kibbler family. Now what's ironic is, when he started to do the Bavaria situation, he tried to like bring people in that after the Kibler family had died, And
Yeah.
they started to sway like the history of it, saying, "Oh, he was never kicked. Oh, he was the successor."
Right.
He took
I know there were some disagreements between Conan Kibler and Chubby 2013. I know that. Hell, even Luisano took this. Oh, I've been in contact with Conan Kibler. He doesn't like whatever. Even so, with all these disagreements that they might have had, because they were really immature. They were not unified. Luisano saw that from the very beginning. That's why he called the Kiblers at the time a joke. But even so, I still view the Models as this, the same line of the Kiblers. They are the same. They're basically the same. It's the same people, pretty much, doing the same kind of thing, having the same kind of mentality. They wanted to get that magic revenge over what happened to Bavaria.
Well, moving on with other leaders, I know that after we spoke, you wanted to clear up some situations with Bass.
Mm.
So, moving back to our previous conversation that we had in private, what were some of the things that you wanted to clear up regarding you and Bass?
So basically, what happened with Bass is interesting. So let's go back a few months to the ending of the Western Ascendancy, which, in my opinion, was my best group. I think the Western Ascendancy was the best out of all of my creations. And Vasiliev, I think, knew that too. And Vasiliev and I, we had periods where we disagreed on some stuff, but we were always decent friends. And he always viewed me with kindness. So at the end of TWA's life, there was a bit of a rift between Sword 00 and General John 12. For years and years, Sword and John did not like sharing the same rank. They didn't like it. Sword would take jabs at John, John would take jabs at Sword, not in that order, sometimes in different orders. And it got to a tipping point in the Western Ascendancy because Sword had friendships with people that really didn't like John, that persuaded Sword to take more action against John. There were people in my Order of the Patriots that didn't really care for being together and being bipartisan with the forces. This is, I think, the problem with a lot of Roblox groups in general that have like a party and have a military being the same. You usually get these kind of things, but it got to a boiling point. And a few days before it got to a boiling point, I decided to quit for a bit and focus on real life matters. So John and Sword were in command. And
we're talking about the most recent one.
Yes.
Okay.
And what happened then was Sword and a few of his supporters ended up leaving the Ascendancy because they saw that it was gearing up more towards John's leadership because I was going away. Sword said, I don't want to do this anymore. And I said, it's fine. I understand you might not want to share a rank with General John 12 anymore. You want to go to a different group and maybe help out in a different nation. That's totally fine by me. And I welcomed him going to IRF. A few days later, after going back on Discord for a little bit, checking my messages, I found out that there was some magical leak of General John 12 and an incident with someone in USM containing some Discord photos of him being very stern and strict with this person, saying, show me some photos of yourself so I can confirm, or something like that. I remember reading these logs back before TWA even started. This was an old issue. And I remember being really mad. And I remember calling John about it and saying, John, this is a really bad thing that you did. This is horrible. If you do this again, John, I'm not going to talk to you anymore. I'm going to excommunicate you. You're no longer going to be part of our groups. And to this day, General John 12 has not done anything of that nature again. Now, people might not know what I'm specifically talking about. He's been accused by some people that left the group because they didn't like John, simply because they didn't like John, as being a pedophile.
Let's restate the accused part.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you all this right now. He's not a pedophile. He doesn't show tendencies that a pedophile would show. He's not into younger people. He was simply being incredibly rude. Very rude in those chats. But what happened is some people that wanted to take a jab at John, not saying it's fully Sword, could have been some people under him, but some people that didn't like John used that past incident as leverage.
So
the claim was also made that this was hidden from IRF's government, when in reality, this was actually public. This was a public issue. It was a public matter. No one was trying to hide this from anyone. I don't remember hiding this issue from anyone. I don't know what John has specifically said to everyone about this matter, but based upon what I know, throughout all of TWA's history, I remember openly speaking about this issue. And John being in calls with me, confirming that this did happen, that he is sorry about what happened, and that he doesn't want to engage in those sort of things ever again. But one side, just like all Roblox groups, of a Roblox group, used that as leverage. And Vasiliev is the kind of person who really wants to show emotional support to someone who's coming in distress. And so some of the people that came in distress to Vasiliev cited those logs and made it seem like there was some big cover-up. Yeah. So Vasiliev, being the nice person that he is, he came to those people in support, immediately ceased contact with John, pulled out of the Allied Concord, and that was it. Later on, a few months later, actually a few days ago, I ended up actually speaking with Vasiliev one-on-one, telling him the full story. I'm not pro-sword. I'm not pro-John. I'm pro-facts. And the facts are that this whole incident, this whole thing about what happened to John, it's all based on a problem that a lot of groups face. One branch not liking another. My own supporters going into a state of civil war over nothing. And I think Vasiliev later on knew that. But Vasiliev's also a busy guy. He gets so many notifications. He has to run IRF. He has to make sure people are running IRF when he's not around. He's only shown what's given to him. And I don't blame him for being upset when he was shown those things. Because if I was shown those things about someone else, and I didn't know the truth about those matters, but I was shown what I was told, I would be upset too. So Vasiliev, I think when he was on your podcast, stated things about myself, I think some things that were right, but also some things that were wrong. And that was happening right after all this mess was occurring. So I consider Vasiliev to still be a very good guy. I don't hold anything against Vasiliev. I know some people that were supportive of John did hold things against Vasiliev for taking in some people who then tried to trash the remnants of the ascendancy. But you know what? People are finally moving past that. Because it was literally over nothing.
So I'd like to go back to something you said a minute. You said John was it was like a rude joke, yeah?
Yeah.
So by that, do you mean like how, for instance, I'd message to him and say like, suck my or something like that?
Yeah.
Basically,
and what's interesting is that the person who actually, was at the receiving end of John saying those things to, this person ended up joining our ranks and ended up rising through the ranks. So this person later on didn't care, right? This person later on realized that General John 12 made a mistake that so many of these players in our quote-unquote community make. And again, this is why I say that this community is not this peaceful place where we all get along. It's filled with people who say things about one another. We have to deal with the fact that that it's a mess. And we have to dig through the mess and find the parts that can make things successful.
Oh, I agree. I think it's rather different as well, because obviously you're behind a PC screen. People tend to say stuff they wouldn't say in real life. People think they're, well, I wouldn't say safer, but you know what I mean. If some people went up to another person and said that in real life, there's a good chance it could end differently.
Exactly.
Get a punch in the face.
That's with the fun of all this. Make 20 vignettes about the case. Call someone something with a label, and boom, you then have a full-fledged rumor that it's hard to dig out of, and that's what happened.
You know, it's
just like all the General John vignettes that have been made since like 2013. General John 12 is evil. Why? He clicks a red button. The world is ending now.
I have to take your standpoint on this and actually say a lot of people in this community are quite childish, and they don't let things go, or they don't even. Most people just jump on the bandwagon. They don't even do their own research. When it comes to me, if someone tells me something, I would like definitive proof before I decide to like take one person's side.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas other people don't bother with that, especially the younger generation that's slightly just come over to the World War II community. They get like told all these things specifically about people that are in the community. Oh, Luisado, he's no good. Or oh, Luisado, he's the fucking father of the nation.
Yeah, this goes back to I think this goes back to belief.
To actually say that, I will argue that he was, even though it kind of seems silly. History is history and facts are facts, and I will confirm that facts are facts even if they are against my own views.
That you're pro-fax? You're a pro-fax man?
I am. I just happen to be.
Anyway, no, it's fine. Moving on to something that I think me and Nerf both agree on, going back to the whole childish thing with like the community. Like, why can't World War II community groups be like this? Why can't World War II community be like this?
Oh my god! So I want to just review over all of these vignettes that have been created. So in 2013, it was the Western Allies that were the only ones that admitted that we used reporting as a tool to win a war. Not our only tool, but as a tool. Not mass reporting, reporting. And soon after, when we just happened to tell people that in Roblox PMs, people started creating vignettes. Like Diab Eternal, he was one of the first ones. Oh my god. Do you guys know what General John and Nerf are doing? They're clicking the red button! Oh no, our groups are done, They're killing the community. Why can't our community be this great place where we hug after we fight each other?
Because
like that.
I'm going to tell you right now, the community, like they act like it was like that before. Which,
it was like, yeah.
Nerfer, you already know. Nerfer, you already know.
Saw that. I was in the Allies, I was in the Axis. I have never seen that ever. It's so silly. And what happens is with these vignettes, it just piles one vignette after another vignette after another vignette. So when people see General John, they say, oh, it's General John. It's the master reporter.
Oh.
The German hit. It's Nerferdude. Is he Germanophobic? I'm part German. Part of my ancestry was from Germany. No, I'm not anti-German. I'm anti-Nazi groups and anti-Axis groups. And I served on the other side, and I know that not everybody on the other side is a Nazi. Thank you very much. Go back to wishing that your community was this happy place where we can all skip together. But no, that is not the case. It is filled with people that try to use one ideology to overpower another. And even if you're not so politically motivated, you trash people. Some people threaten to DDoS people. It is bad. I don't engage in a lot of these immature actions, but to pretend that this community was somehow this beautiful place. Why can't the community be like this? It's garbage. And I want to thank you, sir, for actually being one of the first people to make a vignette to call that out.
Because I came across so many other groups like vignettes about this, and then I'm just sitting here like I just get Vietnam flashbacks from when Zombie would like swear out fucking Eric at the Panzerler maps. I'm like, no, it was never like this.
No.
Just a little quotation for you guys who are listening. I'm just gonna tell you guys a little story. So, me in my younger days as a warrant officer, we're raiding Panzerler, and we usually raid some other groups like Vanderkrieg or whatever. Anyways, so we're raiding Panzerler, and then Zombie starts getting harassed by like a German soldier on the enemy lines, and he just flips from 1 to 100 in a millisecond. He says shit, and I quote, "I will slaughter your family. I will burn your house down. I will kill you with no remorse."
Right.
He didn't give a fuck, and what made it worse is that the kids on the German side or on the Axis side would say the exact same thing back.
Yeah, that's
it was never like it.
When Annette raided Panzer, when I sent in Schaeff, the 101st, and Annette during its early days to mass raid Panzer there, it was the same kind of stuff.
This is why the flaming rule started, because people would just start being like, "No flaming." I'm not hearing people scream obscenities across the map or bubbles flying up in the air.
I love the flaming rule. The flaming rule was the best rule, because if you didn't like someone and they were just being a retard in the comments, you could just say, oh look, you're banned.
Exactly.
Sometimes it's a little silly, though. I will here's another thing that we agree with, Sean. Do you remember when flash raiding was just raiding?
Oh
exactly.
God, yes.
Why do you need to schedule a raid ahead of time? It's so dumb. Just accept that you lost.
I don't respect Nazi groups. So to think, hello, sir, I love your group so much. My name is Nerferdude. Let me shake your hand. We're going to be sending in all of our troops to try to beat you. But don't worry, I see you have those MG42 turrets up on the hill. You should get there quickly. I would love you to mow us down. Thank you so much. I'll buy you coffee afterwards.
I'd
No.
love
I wanna
to
win.
just
I wanna
let you
win the
have
race.
time to prepare for an imminent attack that could possibly destroy your activity.
This is one thing you have to give credit to Panzerleer to. They were always ready for flash raiders. They had like a rally point, and they would always, as soon as like they'd have people checking the group constantly. And
Yeah.
this is the best bit about them. You could
They
send
have bombs.
25. You could have 25 guys down to their villas Bocage. No one would be there, and then 1 minute later, you'd see fucking 15 Panzerleer people because they've just been placed there from like a rally point.
It goes.
They were always active.
Yeah.
And this was before Discord. This was like barely Skype days.
days. This is
Yeah.
in the old Skype days.
Yeah, this was insanely active for German group. This is where I give credit to fucking Eric. I think it has to be one of the biggest active groups. I'm pretty sure they never advertised. That didn't advertise.
Because flash raiding in and of itself is what breeds groups and what makes activity thrive. So when you try and take that away and be like, oh, this is how you raid our group, you're setting yourself up for failure if you're trying to make restrictions. I understand that rules, are important. Trying to make sure that people don't break rules, people aren't like breaking terms of service, and you guys get in trouble for it. But again, that doesn't necessarily equate to you saying, "Oh man, you have to tell us 20 minutes ahead of time so we can gather all 6 soldiers that we had that were busy eating dinner."
All the game passes or MG42s or tanks pointed straight at the Raiders. Fine. Thank you so much.
Don't give raiders any sort of protection or military base to like.
Yeah. And
Stupid.
so many of these groups, I know, I've been in so many of these groups. A lot of the gentlemen, they hang out in the back. They're like, wait till Nerfer sees this. Give all MG42. Brrr. Oh, no, you're just calling this out. I don't know what you're talking about. I won't give you admin to look at the logs, but we're telling the truth. You're just going off as a little crazy there, sir.
I remember one of my groups. It was a D-Day map. Nerv, you should remember this. It was a D-Day map, and I had like 6 people on me. It died down to about 4 people, and a lot of these people were BC. They had money. They spent them on game passes, and all of a sudden, my 3-4 people are facing 46, 47 people of Nerferdude, General John, and a Beano from USM 1940s. Now, I don't know if you're going to defend yourself here, but we won the raid. You left halfway through. I'm not sure if it was you or a Beano. I think it was a Beano. Claimed it was unfair because we had set the machine guns up, and I am an advocate for realistic damage guns. I can't stand if you can't want to.
It was probably Albiano because I like staying and fighting. As long as you don't say, you can't flash raid, I will send in...
I'm pretty sure you had brought the MG42 Game Pass yourself. I'm pretty sure I remember you running up...
Well, that goes back to the whole aspect of, like you're actually defending from a flash raid, even if you have 4 people.
Yeah, exactly. You can still do it as long as the guns are realistic.
You know it. You also know the bases more than the attackers.
Exactly. There's advantages.
Probably have access to vehicles or whatever you got. You can do it. I could do it.
It's called skill, losers. Get good.
This is what I love about the clan groups. They came up with all of these ideas to give like little obbies and things like that, so you can do shortcuts and get like even more advanced routes around the enemy. So it just makes the game so much more fun. And people that play the game regularly know all these like shortcuts. I saw that John did it in his new map, like the tunnel and things like that, and the teleport across the river. All of that makes combat so much better. And the people that don't know that exists are gonna like not profit from it. Whereas the people that are defending, the hardest job to do, especially if you're outnumbered, they get the bonuses for it.
Again, this goes back to the whole this also goes back to a mentality that I see a lot of groups failing to realize. Like, if you lose a raid, it's fine. Just as long as you learn from that raid, you will actually gain experience and be able to beat them the next time around. Like, again, the more you raid this map, the higher the chance you're going to win.
Exactly, and not only that, many of the groups I fought, I don't have a liking to, so I will continuously attack that map until the enemy forces are depleted. Yeah, so I want to learn from my past mistakes. I want to learn from my blunders. I want to tell my generals, here are the problems we faced in the last raid. Here is why we lost. Now let's go there and win.
Here's a question I've got, because I've noticed you've always done this. You've always paid for game passes at enemies' bases, but you despise the groups, so why are you funding?
Because I think that I will sound a bit cynical here. I think that not all of my enemies are good with spending their money. I think that a lot of them,
Fuck, he's got
a lot
me
of
to
their ads are not so well. They can't get a lot of numbers. So I think that me giving them money that they will waste anyways and won't actually gain anything from. I'll get a great gun. We get to mow them down, and then they lose. They go into a state where they can't win, and then the war is close to being won. So it depends on the group, of course. I don't do this with every group. I do it with some of them.
You got me to a point, then. But I'll take.
And guess what? I'm not. This also, is such. It really shows also that I'm not sitting on a computer going, "All right, reporting squadron, please be prepared to press the red button." No, I'll spend money to get a good gun at a fun World War II game to raid. I know it's shocking, but I'll do it.
Report 1, report in.
Reporter 1 standing by, Reporter 2 standing by. They're like going in on the X-Wings with fucking the Death Star.
Emerald John, prepare to send email to info@roblox.com.
Report 3, write an email now.
Use the report abuse button, Nerfer. Use the report abuse. He's like going in there as Luke Skywalker, and then freaking Louis Sato as Darth Vader's right behind him. Anyways, I think we should move on to the next question. And seeing how you brought up the whole reporting aspect, like let's get to the main question here. Why do you believe reporting German groups or just Axis groups in general is an acceptable way to defeat them?
So, ever since I was in Austria, as I told you, I learned about the concept of total war. Not simply winning and then shaking hands with your enemy, not winning and then just putting it on a scoreboard. Because a lot of times, people will lie. They'll say, no, we win. No, what do you say? You won? No, we won. What are you talking about? So I'll go over for the first reason for why we report, okay? Because it really shows in an unbiased way, well, biased, I guess, with what the company favors, but in the context of the war, who really won and who really lost. So that's the first reason. The second reason, of course, is quite obvious. I also served on the Axis. I've been in many different neo-Nazi groups. I've infiltrated so many of them. And when I was actually not infiltrating them, and when I was actually in Austria and in Panzer there were some people with, let's just say, interesting views about people in these groups. I'm not, not everyone, of course, but a decent chunk. And later on, I remember learning more and more about Louis Otto's ultimate goal, to take the people that he's brought into his groups, his empires, and then to bring them to the Northwest Front. A real-life white supremacist group that wants to set up a white ethno-state with a full radio program, with actual supporters and actual leanings. And of course, Louis is not the only one, but the one that really started it all. There are so many people now that have some similar plans of using those views and implementing them onto the Kiplers. Conan Kipler was the same way. He was an incredible racist. You had some people in Lair, not all of them. Eric wasn't one of them, but there were people that Eric tolerated, and he worked with us. A lot of Wehrmacht groups that I joined and infiltrated, there were a lot of neo-Nazis in them as well. And Roblox knew this. A lot of times, even these Wehrmacht groups, they'd CD them because of the relation to the Third Reich. Even though they weren't the SS, even though they weren't the Einstein group, anything like that, they were deleted. So those are the reasons why. In real life, I'm an advocate for free speech. I'm an advocate that in a free society, you should be able to hold whatever you have, even if it is a really bad or really horrible one, because it protects all of us. But on this gaming platform, you have actual National Socialists, not like people that might be like conservative that you call Nazi because you disagree with them. Actual National Socialists, actual neo-Nazis in their teens, and getting up there in age, people that actually have thought about their political views, implementing them to brainwash children. And I know I've gotten a lot of flack for this. This is why this is for question. If this wasn't happening, I wouldn't be doing this. Like, it's not that I love the bad PR. I love the bad press when it comes to this. No. I'd love it if this quote-unquote community could be a really fun community, just reenact and have fun. Save a lot of stress on all my officers, save a lot of stress on me. But that's not the case. And I just want to say again, not everybody on the other side is like this. But it still is the same way that it was ever since Alaman started. You have the Northwest Front, with Lewis's plan, getting people from these empires, bringing them into his, internet servers and moving them to other organizations. You have Atomwaffen, a group that was associated with the Parkland shooter, the shooter in Parkland, Florida, who killed numerous students at a high school on Valentine's Day. He is associated with Atomwaffen, which is a very similar. They're using these games as recruitment tools. So I'm sorry, everyone. If you don't like me for pressing a red button, that a corporation gets to decide if something gets banned or not. But it's for the greater good. And I say that with compassion for people that also want to have fun and also shoot a panzer once in a while.
So I want to go back to something you said.
Extreme to shoot a panzer.
Well, shoot out of a panzer. I get it. It's fun to play as the Wehrmacht. It's fun to be in the war, to fight on D-Day. I get that. It's fun. That's why I started playing these games too.
Well, again, Nerfer, going back to what you said regarding keyword brainwashing. So, you believe that there are Nazis on here that brainwash young children, etc., to harbor National Social sentiment, right?
That is correct.
So,
Yes.
do you believe the same can be done with communism, democracy, monarchism, etc., and literally any other ideology on the political spectrum?
Yes, 100%. And I think it can be done with really any ideology. There are communists on the platform that have done the same. The difference is that I think compared to all the other groups, I think the Nazis have done the worst damage, and we are against them. So I will admit it does work in our favor. There is that bias that I also mentioned. How
I have a quick question to jump in. Do you believe that as National Socialism is banned on the platform, that communism should be banned on the platform? And I'm talking versions of communism. There are a few rare cases, that did not commit anything stupid like genocide, but the vast majority, the main one, did.
Yes, no, those are facts that actually happened. I'm not so passionate about it because it's not where I stand currently. It's not the objectives of my groups or anything like that, so I wouldn't be upset if they did that too. I wouldn't directly oppose it. I wouldn't care as much. I wouldn't be involved. I wouldn't be pushing for it or fighting back against it. I'd just be out of it. I wouldn't mind otherwise.
So you just wouldn't care?
I wouldn't care.
All right.
Okay.
Because I can absolutely understand why a game that wants to protect kids and make kids have fun, leave that stuff out of it. The only reason why we in the Western Allies are fighting back against all this stuff is because of what we've seen people like Lewis Otto doing.
Let me phrase
This
it.
is a resistance to that.
Let me phrase it differently. If Roblox decided tomorrow that they want to ban communist groups as well, they put communism in there with National Socialism and communism, whatever. Would you all of a sudden turn around and start reporting communist groups as well?
I don't know. I can't really give a definitive answer on that. Maybe. It depends on if there is a specific group or a specific person that targets us and tries to harm our people. But we're not at war with them.
So you won't
They just
attack
get us
them
for getting
unless they
bullied by-
attack you. Is that correct?
Yeah, and we wouldn't even probably send troops to attack. We'd investigate the matter and we'd maybe deal with the situation in private.
All
We
right.
wouldn't have a formal declaration of war. I've never gone to war really against any Soviet groups.
I'm talking about like Roblox officially saying they're bannable.
Yeah. Yeah. So if there was an issue with that, if there were people from communist groups somewhere harming my people, harming me, putting people in harm's way, then we'd consider taking action. But it wouldn't be like something so public. It wouldn't be some declaration.
So you wouldn't consider it on the same level as National Socialism?
No.
Okay.
Because I've seen Soviet groups. They haven't. So far, I've seen the RSCCP with Chillin and Zombie. I've seen the RSSR, the 3 iterations. The first 2 with I Am Pie Man, and then the second with the third with Vasiliev. I've seen the RSA. I've seen the CCCP. I've seen the IRF. I've seen all these RM, all these groups throughout the years. The groups themselves are nothing. They're not bad at all in comparison to the Axis groups, and especially in comparison to the neo-Nazi.
Let me just put another statement up. Say, for instance, someone made a German group, specifically like, let's say, a division,
Mhm.
and they are openly transparent that they don't allow anyone of like extreme right into their group.
They put that long description.
No, ignore
Disclaimer.
the crappy disclaimer.
Oh,
They're not
God,
like
that
that.
was annoying.
They say this, for instance, a new group or someone who's never done it makes a division.
Right.
They're completely open that they don't tolerate it, and they're officially with it. So that anyone who is involved in that thing or won't stop speaking about it or involving the group in it will be exiled. And if you had a complaint about someone who was involved in it or is still involved in something, you told them and they exiled, would you still try and target that group, or would you just let them live?
I don't know if I'd do either. If these people, if none of them are neo-Nazis, if they just want to have fun, they want to build realistic technology, they want to fight, they want to do stuff like that, I'd actually go talk to that group. It would be a rare case, by the way. It'd be a very rare case. And I'd tell that group, a lot of the groups that look like yours are not the same as yours. And sadly, it is not, this community is not the way that you want it to be. I started out by firing MP40s and having fun on a battlefield and things like that. And I hold some sentiment to what you are trying to do.
Mm-hmm.
However, we must take up arms for something greater. And I would love it if you all could join our ranks. We will match your ranks with this current German group or Axis group that you are in, and we would love to have you on board. And we want to be as historical as possible. If you have some good half-track that would be good for the Raiders, we'd love to add it in. And we would give you credit. That's my stance.
So,
I would hold sentiment with these people. I don't think I would target these people. I don't think I would target these people right away. They'd be on the absolute last end of my list, only if it was absolutely necessary. But sadly, most of these groups are not like that. I wish they were.
Okay, I agree with that standpoint. The sad thing about it is, no matter how hard you try, there are always closet Nazis.
Yep.
I mean, even with groups that try to crack down on it, like Django's group. You know who Django is, don't you?
I know Django Fed Alex, yes.
Yeah, he's a nice guy. But there's a few people in there that are bad apples. A lot of them actually have been kicked or exiled already.
Well, because they also don't want spies to know of what they're doing too. We've sent in allied agents to numerous groups in the past, and if we've seen it, it's perfect leverage for us to then take down the enemy and then to advance to the other one. So they know. A lot of them know by now about what we can do. And so they immediately, if they see it public, they crack down on it. Even in Louis Otto's groups. You mention something racist or anti-Semitic out in the open and not in their private Discord servers. It's a full-on neo-Nazi group. It is the neo-Nazi group.
Mm-hmm.
But they also don't want to be banned right because they know that people are watching. And they want to try to create the illusion that somehow they are the Holy Roman Empire or the German Empire.
I'll tell you something.
Something
Now,
with Pickelobs or Kaiserreichs or something that has nothing to do with Hitler, even though everything.
typically what I would say is people that are trying to hide stuff, are trying to do National Socialism and bring politics into the group, are the ones who make alt accounts. People that don't have anything to hide and they typically don't involve National Socialism into the are the ones that own the group on the main account. Because they feel they have nothing to hide.
Yeah,
they know if they get banned, they get banned.
Before, not all the leaders are like that. You have some people in the high command, some of the officer corps, and this is the problem. It's like a bag of nuts. You know, these this is probably the same in your country. There are these boxes or bags of nuts that you can buy, and it comes in a variety.
Yeah.
And the problem is you're trying to pick out the almonds, for example, that you like, but there's so many other nuts in there that you can't get all of them because it's such a mixed bag, and that's why I have come to the conclusion that I think, reporting and taking down these groups is necessary.
But where my standpoint is, what if you want to go out and buy a full bag of almonds and you make sure that there's no mixed nuts in that bag?
Tell me when that happens, and we'll get talking.
I'll let you know.
Hope that's a good answer.
Well, after this long and thoughtful conversation about reporting, let's see what else we have here that we need to finish off with. These are a couple of good questions. So, Do you feel regret for some of the actions you've made on this platform? Like, if there was something you could have done different back in, let's say like 2014, 2013, etc.,
I've got a
uh,
few things.
what would it be?
Can I go back in time even more?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yep.
August of 2012. Luisato and I were really great friends. I served as his crown prince, which is really code for Reichsfuhrer. And I did it, like I said, I did a lot of bad things, but somehow I felt really attached to this person. And he felt really attached to me. We were really, really strong comrades. He trusted me with nearly everything. And he said, Nerfer, I'm 15 now. I'm getting a little too old for this. Like, can you imagine 15 being in comparison to so many other people now?
Dude, I tried to quit when I was like 14 or 15, so I completely understand that stance.
He tried to give me the Austrian Empire. And he ended up giving me the Austrian Empire, and I felt really grateful when he gave it to me, that I felt like I was going to continue everything that he started, because I was so indoctrinated, and I loved this camaraderie at the time, that based on a PR stunt or some bad PR move, I think I said that we're moving beyond the age of Luisato, but I actually didn't mean of it as an insult. You know how when you talk about dynasties, there's like the age of this one ruler and then the age of another ruler,
Yeah.
but you can still respect the age of the past ruler. That's what I tried to do. Apparently, a bunch of Luisato supporters and Luisato himself saw that as treason. And so, after getting home from a museum tour with my family, I get to my base and noticed that there's a full line of troops preparing to fire at my gate, at my base. All troops that were fully with me 12 hours ago, because a civil war occurred. And Luisato did not want to compromise. He wanted the group and nothing else. And I saw that as a betrayal. I saw that as him not trusting me at all, out of all the things that have happened. So, and I was much younger then too, so I felt really emotional over this. And I made the silliest decision.
You gave it
After
back.
really not liking this civil war, I made the worst decision ever. And it's why I'm actually still here. It's because I gave the Austrian Empire to Vactus. I thought, well, I got involved with all this World War II stuff and dragged into it before then. Before all that World War II stuff in Austria, I was in these Helgas groups. I was in Vactovia. Let me go back to my roots and restart over. I simply asked for the rank of sergeant in Vactovia for all of Austria. And almost immediately after I gave them, I regretted it. What I didn't know at the time, I thought Vactus was going to destroy it. I thought he was going to be like, all right, great job, welcome back. But what happened was that Lewis did not quit. Instead, what he decided to do is he decided to stay. A few months later, the Second Alamand Empire was created, the Greater Alamand. After that was destroyed, and after the Austrian Empire was continentally deleted in 2013, the Austrian Empire was renamed by the Ottomans because they actually do this. They changed it to a group called the Holy Roman Imperium. And that, HRI, was the base for nearly all of Luisato's future groups. The entire Northwest plan, most of this ideological conflict, could have been completely avoided if I just destroyed Ostrat and quit. And he, someone who I literally believed at the time was actually going to quit, and I think if I destroyed Ostrat, I think he actually would have quit. I don't think he would have come back.
Mm-hmm.
And all of this that we are talking about right now, this entire conflict involving tons of groups, tons of people, Luisato supporters versus my supporters, this giant mess, this ideological war, this mess that's happening in the World War II community, a lot of the stuff that you talk about with other people, all of that could have been avoided if I just did the right thing and shut it down when I had the chance. And to this day, I regret doing that. Because now the Northwest Plan is going into my... Because now all of this stuff is occurring. There would not need to be a massive war. There would not need to be a Western Allies. There would not need to be any of that. The slate could have been wiped clean. No vignettes about mass reporting, nothing. None of this trash. All gone. If I simply shut it down. That is my biggest regret on this platform.
Mm-hmm.
So moving on to a lighter note, what's your fondest memory?
Oh, God.
You don't have to answer that. I'm just kidding.
No, I have to think.
I have an idea. The Sniper City kill streak.
Oh, I love that game. Whenever I'm bored, sometimes I just go on Sniper City.
I think I can remember like 2-3 years ago. He drags me into a call. I think it was on Skype. It's like, hey, yo, do you want to call? It's like, oh, yeah, sure. Come play Sniper City with me. Never heard of this game before. I went there, I'm like, what the fuck is this trash? Like, the guns were like from like 2010, maybe, 2011. But Nerva just enjoys the fuck out of it. I went down there recently, actually, and I think most of the stuff is broken due to some distance.
Probably.
So the sniper rifle is still working, and the sword is still working. The rocket launcher.
Oh, he even knows. He's gone down there.
Yes, the rocket launcher stopped working around 2 years ago.
Dude, he has the shit written down just in case.
I have a lot written down. I always keep documents.
He's got like a fucking stack of folders of Roblox content.
Just Sniper City, by the way. Nothing else. Not at all. No.
Not even like anything regarding Lewis or like TW8. You just have like an entire folder dedicated.
Just
thousands,
2 terabytes worth of data regarding to Sniper City.
Today, I got a 20 kill streak.
It's just like a journal, like every other minute he like writes down if he's thinking about Sniper City.
I fired the gun. I hit him.
Like, no, mid-fight, he just fucking pauses and then like, starts writing the journal.
Honestly, I think one of my fondest memories was Annette. I think Annette in our offensive operations against Panzer Lehr. Annette was the first Allied nation state. It began on September 4th, 2012. Before then, you only had like the 101st and another group led by Iceball as well. They were alone. There was no Western allies back then. So when myself and my old staff from Ostron, when we regretted what happened with Bacchus and everything, we decided to set things straight to repay the community, if you'd like to call it that, for all the bad things we did in Ostron. We wanted to make things right. So we created a group called Annette. It was a group based on some British elements, some American elements. It was fictional, though.
Yeah.
And I remember it was so exciting. Just starting this new thing that has never been explored before. And then creating Shafe as well. It was so exciting for me. It was so much fun. And I remember using the tactics of mass raiding that Ostrak taught me to use that for the new Allied war strategy. So we used to attack Panzer Lehr Bocage with what at the time were our really, really cool uniforms.
Really cool. Like,
really cool uniforms at the time. They're so bad now in comparison to the new ones. But I remember we used to raid Panzer Lehr Bocage. They couldn't even get out of the base. And it was just so exciting to see something that you created, something that you built up from pure scratch, doing something right for people, while having fun, while being in the World War II experience.
Mm-hmm.
I know it's intense.
I know it is.
Yeah,
It's
super
so
intense. Extremely intense. No, it's just it just brings me back because it's like, yeah. Did you ever think sometimes that when you do stuff on this platform, it like gets you this far? Like you wouldn't expect at all that you'd still be doing this like years from now?
I never expected it. I'm not even going to lie. I started out in August of 2011, and I thought this was just a cool game to shoot laser guns at raiders and fight RAT on their battle lines. I never, ever, ever thought that this would be happening, that this ideological conflict would still be going on, the fact that it exists at all. Like if I went back in time and I told my 13-year-old self of the Northwest Imperative, of the conflicts against Aliment, Ostrat, Holy Rome, Greater Holy Rome, Death Course of Stego, all these groups, I would have been like, what is this game about? What
Tell me more.
It's a war, you gotta get involved now while you have the chance.
You just like tell yourself exactly step by step what to do.
Step by step. Okay, Nerfer, Alimend at the time is around now, so you need to infiltrate that. Forget Bactovia.
Completely just screw them over. Just forget about them. Don't even care. Just leave them. Just leave them.
The weird part is I've actually daydreamed about going back in time and telling my future self this, because I've seen people on this platform come to me and cry and actually suffer, based upon stuff in their real life, seeing their technology get fried and their people getting threatened and stuff like that, over stuff as silly as the kids' building game. You guys probably wake up and you're like, how is this happening on a kid's game? How silly is this? The fact that we have to be fighting these wars.
To be honest, like the whole notion that it's a kid's game to me, like really, the more I think about it, is like bullshit, because this isn't what kids do. All right, I'm gonna tell you right now.
No, this is cyber warfare. That's what it is.
Well, I guess last but not least, regarding questions before we move on to the end or closing of this podcast, is I want to go back to what we were talking about regarding the Roblox platform. So, obviously you've been on Roblox for quite a long time now. I think everybody can agree to that. So, do you think it's improved since you first joined? Like, has there been major improvements in how it handles like the website, how it handles studio, etc.? Or do you think it's gotten worse? I mean, are there any areas do you think that Roblox could improve upon?
There are always areas that this company can improve upon. Believe me, if they were perfect and they improved upon everything, the war would have been won. However, I will say that overall, things have been better. Let's look at USM, for example. While Eric Modell took over my group, I would really call it, while he used it to milk people for money, It has hundreds of thousands of people. It has so much content and activity. You blame Backbutton and Abiano and Eric for what they're doing right now. I still will, because some of their actions are horrible. But these supergroups were not around these years ago. Which is another point I actually want to bring up, because I did actually want to bring this up. The World War II community, the Defenders of the Community, the World Congress, the League of Nations, these groups that claim that the war is coming to an end. Everything is so great right now, and everything is so peaceful. We can all just hang out. A lot of people have come up to me recently and said, Nerfer, things are boring. Things are not so good. Not much progress is being made. And I will then make the argument, and I've come to this conclusion a while ago, that a lot of advances in technology, a lot of advances in groups and all this stuff in our community was based on war, was based on this ideological conflict. I want it to end. I want us to eventually come to a peace. But the progress in all these groups, the different landscapes and environments, it's been made due to this war. You know, it's been made thanks to people that actually want to decide to get things done and actually fight for something instead of making a vignette asking where your community is going, because that does nothing. So overall, thanks to this conflict, and thanks to many of my supporters and my generals and my staffers and the groups that I've led in the past, and I guess you could say thanks to some of our enemies, we've grown. And I think it will only continue to grow. And Roblox will, of course, continue to grow as a gaming. And I think, overall, it will become more interactive for people. Yeah, we missed the old days, we missed some of the old features, but I think that's because we grew up with those features. We were intertwined with some of those fun plastic games that we used to play with for fun. I remember the days. I love the days. But if you brought a kid back to those old days, I don't think they'd enjoy it as much as they enjoy it. That's just my opinion, of course.
Yeah. It's a pretty good opinion. Why?
Well,
Similar in it.
yeah, I can agree to it. I mean, I suppose I really like enjoy the old maps and etc. because it kind of just it doesn't bring back necessarily nostalgia, but it's just more simple to think about. And even though it's like simplistic in design or it's like simplistic in its details and etc., it still feels like you can have fun with it. Because although no matter how basic it is, the core concept is there for the game, like that it's trying to represent.
No, most definitely. Can't disagree with you there.
But before we end the podcast, Nerfer here wanted to speak to us about his new group that he's going to be coming out with. So, Nerfer, if you could please explain to the...
Sure. By the time you're all hearing this, there will be a new group up. It's called the Western Imperium. The Western Imperium is the successor to the Western Ascendancy. One of my best groups ever created. By now, you'll be seeing a lot of people in my game servers, a lot of people rejoining after another successful launch. I've managed to get all of the people that disagreed over partisan nonsense to finally come back. Because we still have a war to fight. After everything I've said here in this podcast, I think we've all come to an agreement that complaining about things instead of actually doing things is not productive. Just stating that your community should be something better than it currently is, it's not going to fix anything. Taking action does. Actually being on the front lines does something. Pushing ahead. Holding something higher above yourself. A goal of some kind. That's better than just sitting around. Anyone who has served in my past groups will be welcome back. We'll do our best to do rank transfers, as we want to give everyone their old rank. And for those who have maybe disagreed with me over the years, who've thought differently, I ask for you to enlist, to actually see what we are about. We're going to have a civilian sector and a military sector. We're going to be engaging in trade with numerous other groups and powers. We're going to be fighting back against neo-Nazi tyranny. Louis Sada is still around on the platform, believe it or not. He's on an alt account, but he's planning on starting a new group up soon, publicly led by his supporters. We need to be ready, and we need all the help that we can get. I ask for your support. I ask for you to come over and see what we're all about, because together we'll make a difference.
All right, well, I suppose that wraps everything up. This has been your co-host Chillin, and this has been your co-host Yod, and we'll be seeing you guys later.
See you, fags.